Welcome to another special episode of Tales from the Bin. In a previous episode, I talked about the trash rules and how we all started, and at one point I reached a spot where I needed to just ask myself, who is our city manager, Jane Shang? So I decided that it's important to go ahead and do an episode to talk about who she is and what we've determined throughout our research. The first thing I did is I turned to Google, probably just like anybody else, and in about 0.68 seconds, top 5 things about Jane Shang popped up. Jane Shang scandal, Jane Shang cover-up, the Jane Shang affair, lack of confidence in the department, the El Paso scandal, taxpayers foot, 10-month paid leave before exit of city manager. It goes on, and some of them I like. The city council, they had some things to say about this as well. And one specific council member, I'm going to quote him here, he says, "It's almost like a smokescreen. You just pull the wool over my eyes and it ain't going to happen anymore." Now that's not the only time that she's been accused of that. It goes on to state that another council quotes, "not getting true and accurate information." Another one states, "the more people lie to us, the more they get rewarded," and they're pointing out many discrepancies on how staff presents information to elected officials and the inequality among council members. Another one says, "appears to be a lack of transparency and confidence in her department." And with all I've read, I mean, I can't imagine why. Like with Jane's big claim to fame, it was called the Big Dig. That's the same one that has since been riddled with leaks and liability. A liability that included a suit where $407 million was paid. That's enough for a whole nother episode, so I'm not going to get into that. So what did happen to Jane Shang in El Paso, Texas? There's a lot of controversy around that and not many clear answers. In fact, in another article, they discussed this, and a council member said, "I waited for this item until today," referring to a commission meeting. "If we were going to get private briefings, well, you should have told us, and I should have been a part of the private briefings." So what happened was a meeting was put on the agenda to discuss her exit. Deal was struck, and it turns out the former city manager amended her contract and decided that it was not for the public to know about. I've read article after article where, people are questioning, well, how can you amend the contract and why and at what expense to the taxpayers? And she was quoted as saying it's a private personal matter. Well, they feel obviously that if using their funds to give somebody a golden parachute with their exit, that 10 months of paid leave is what she was on. And everybody's like, oh, okay, this is her past. No, this was 2014. We hired her in 2015. We hired her with a scandal still looming, still articles being written questioning about her. One I want to actually to go over, I just came across, and it's an update to Jane Shang. Apparently they are now familiar with what's going on in Deltona, and they made some really scary comparisons that I think that you should be aware of and really think about this. So it goes on to say, you all remember Jane Shang, right? So they go through how she was the former deputy city manager. She was put on paid leave. It goes on to state that they feel that she was paid to remain quiet about some dealings within the city hall. They ask why it's brought up. It says that a few months ago, he had some inquiries about his writings of her in El Paso. And it says, just like in El Paso, those opposed to the public policy agenda of the community are subjected to various attempts to silence them or to intimidate them. Does that sound familiar? He goes on to talk about being cut off in meetings and things like that. He goes on to talk about the trash system, and it says, it seems Deltona moved to an automated trash pickup system, much like El Paso's a few years ago. Along came rules of how the trash was going to be put down to the roadways and pickups. And it basically says that it was a failure there, and now it's a failure here. They talk about the controversies of lack of transparency and how El Paso had very similar things. I'm going to actually post this for you guys to read. It's a very interesting article, how they talk about some corruption that was going on in El Paso and how they see a lot of the mirror images starting to form here in Deltona. So I want to talk a little bit about the city and her position as a city manager. Not sure if anybody knows, but Deltona has what they call a vision statement. They have the city vision, the mission statement, and the core values, and I just want to touch base on just a couple of those. The mission statement in itself. It is the mission of the Deltona city government to anticipate and provide for the needs of its residents with quality service, innovation, and leadership for today and in the future. Okay? Sounds like we have a really great mission statement. Now let's look at our core values. Honesty, integrity. I'm just going to paraphrase some of these. It talks about that they believe that they are dedicated to the, we believe in honest and open government that accentuates best business practices. We're dedicated to the highest ideal of integrity, openness, and fairness in dealing with Deltona's residents and its employees. Now you guys go back and look at those commission meetings and tell me if you see that that's what's being presented before us, because although Jane also violates a lot of these core values and such, so does a lot of our other commissioners and even our mayor. The thing that caught me about the honesty and integrity is I found an article right after Jane Shang was hired about her first day on the job. And this is when I was first looking into who she was and, you know, things about her. And right away I found that first day on the job, she lies to a reporter. She didn't have to. She could have come up with anything that she needed to with that question. But here was the question. She was asked about what pulled her back to Florida. What made her come back to Florida? They didn't specify Deltona. They asked Florida in general. She says, rather than say Florida, let's say the pool is Deltona. Deltona to me has great potential. Now, why do I say that was a lie? I say that it's a lie because her pool was not Deltona. That's just another way of her trying to get us to, I don't know, like her or there's a million reasons why she could have said. The point is, if Deltona was her pull back to Florida, then why did she apply as a city manager in Palm Bay at the same time as Deltona, administrator in Palm Bay County, Alachua County manager? The pool was never Deltona. In fact, she still rents here in Deltona. She has not purchased a home here. She has no interest in Deltona whatsoever. A lot of these ordinances don't even apply to where she lives either. It's just, there's a lot to question here. But let's go on about inclusiveness and diversity under core values. We are committed to actively seeking public participation, and we promote a public process whereby we can respond to the community needs while balancing competing interests and diverse opinions. Do you feel that that's what's happening in our city with our city elected officials? Because I sure don't. It goes on to talk about human compassion, how we care for all people. We place great emphasis, and it talks about personal qualities, independence of thought and ready sense of humor and a caring attitude. That's not what I'm presented with when I'm interacting with those in City Hall. Respect. Here's a big one. We promote mutual respect, courtesy, inclusion, and thoughtfulness in all interactions, and we provide a high level of customer service and responsiveness by city staff to the residents. We treat all individuals with dignity, we respect every opinion, and we listen to all sides. Now, if that was true, Deltona would truly actually be a wonderful place. We could be interactive with our officials, we could ask them questions, and instead of being dogged on, we'd have a little bit of respect, as stated we should, and we would actually be getting somewhere in this, but we're not. We're being ignored, we're being shut down, we're being belittled. The respect is not there, and so they get none in return. Trust. We encourage and develop an atmosphere of mutual trust and appreciation among residents, employees, and policymakers. Are you trustful of the City of Deltona government right now? Because I'm not. Talks about using clear, factual, timely communication. Again, I don't even think I need to go any further than this. They violate so many of these, and it's not just Jane Shang. That's why I wanted to bring this up. I wanted to show you that there are core values that are supposed to be in place that many are violating, not just Jane Shang. But I do want to get into her specifically. Let's talk about her duties and functions as a city manager. She has this whole, it's actually, I believe, in the annual budget. It's a message and a guidelines of her performance measures and yada yada. I want to touch base on one specific. It talks about part of her functional duties: handle citizens' inquiries, complaints, and requests. She's failed at her job. I've asked for a meeting with her for almost 8 months now and have not received one. Somebody else asked for one, and within a week they got it. But you're going to tell me that she handles citizens' inquiries, complaints, and requests? She's not definitely in my case. So that's a failure already as a city manager to perform her functional duties. It goes on to say that the city manager's mission statement, they strive to provide the residents of Deltona with services that are efficient, cost-effective, and meet their needs through customer service-based delivery. I don't think we're getting much of that from her either. Her key goals and objectives, how they measure her performance. Now keep this in mind, because at one point we're going to go back and discuss about her review that she just had, and we're going to look at how each commissioner voted on that. Under key goals, maintain commitment to high ethical standards by the city manager and throughout the organization, and encourage continued professional development by city staff. I think we've proven many times over the high ethical standards by this city manager it doesn't meet. That there's no high ethical standards there. Another one, ensure commission is provided with advice and options concerning emerging issues and policy to achieve the city's overall mission. Now, we already know that that's not happening. We've had sometimes, we just had an election, but there was 2 previous commissioners who had issues with this happening, and now we have 2 current commissioners, at least, still having this issue where they are not provided with options in a timely manner. They're pretty much, well, we have to go ahead and vote this now or we're going to lose money. It's a last-second push. And they're definitely not provided with advice on all the options. I think we've heard many meetings where that's been discussed and that they find that this is an issue with the city manager. Let's touch base on the city budget message. She claims it's to build civic confidence in our greatest asset, our people and our children. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't see how she has provided any confidence at all since she's been on board. Everything has been fail after fail after fail. She can't even follow our core values. She's not following her goals and objectives. She's failing at her functional duties. Keep all this in mind at Monday's meeting. I'm sitting here showing you, black and white, that she's failing as a city manager. Here's another one. The support of a dedicated city commission, involved residents, businesses, hospitals, schools, are truly appreciated by all involved in preparing the budget. That's not true. I went to them about questions and concerns on the budget. I had a meeting with the mayor on it. It went nowhere. My concerns went nowhere. They never do. And that's going to come up to where we're going to talk about next, about how our concerns, not just my own, are not being taken seriously, and they're not being investigated as they should properly. The city manager, along with the city, the commission, and the mayor, all took an oath. It's an oath to uphold the Constitution, the Charter, ordinances, and policies. So let's see where Jane Shang has messed with upholding her oath of office. Authorize the removal of a city hard drive by outside third party without IT permission. Another one, Florida Statute 119, Florida's law regarding open records and open government. We touched base on this in another episode. Also known as the Sunshine Law. She has made every attempt, I've read you an email, of interfering in open government and in transparency, interfering in public records requests. In fact, I know of a request that's been asked of her that she needs to provide the information, and she's failed to do it as of today. Let's go to another one, the fraud policy. Now here's a good one. This fraud policy is actually a policy in the city of Deltona. They've created it. I hear that the one online is actually an old one and that there has been an updated version. But from my understanding, it's pretty much the same. I just want to touch base on this because the very last part of it says the city manager is responsible for the administration, interpretation, revision, and application of this policy. So if this isn't being followed, she has failed. Everywhere in here talks about this falls on the city manager. Let's read a very important, right in the introduction of this fraud policy. The city recognizes a zero tolerance policy regarding fraud and corruption. All matters raised by any source will be taken seriously and properly investigated. You guys have heard me bring up some serious allegations. You've heard me bring up some interesting questions regarding fraud and corruption, even collusion. And has anybody seen me taken seriously yet? Only by 2 commissioners. 2 commissioners have taken the time out to email with me and ask me what my concerns are. They're the only ones that took steps further and investigated on their own. I'm not privy to all that they've investigated or what they've uncovered or what they have found, but they keep me up to date and they let me know that they are still looking into my concerns. They are following the fraud policy. The rest of them up there have also failed under this policy. They have not upheld their duties and their oath in office. It goes on to talk about how fraud is defined, corruption is defined, but when I find something very interesting on page 2, it talks about allegations and concerns about fraudulent or corrupt activity may come from a variety of sources, including members of the public. They cannot get out from underneath this. There are many commissioners, including the mayor, who have failed under this fraud policy. They are in violation of this. Only 2 commissioners, and I know you guys know which ones because they get the most heat up there. They also get the slack. Why? Because they are doing what they're supposed to do under this fraud policy. I had a question and concern. They had to take it seriously and investigate it. It talks about all reported concerns get forwarded to the city manager. This has happened, so I know she is aware of all of these allegations. So again, she has failed in her duties and has violated her oath by not following this fraud policy. She has not followed up on it. She's made no corrective actions. It talks about how offenders at all levels of the organization will be treated equally regardless of their position, years of service, and relationship to the city. That hasn't happened either. You've seen it. Just based on this fraud policy, the city manager authorizing the removal of the city hard drive does not go hand in hand with this. In fact, it actually supports the opposite. She's covering things up for them. Let's go one more section. Florida Statute Section 443.036. There's a Section 29. If you look at A and B, why am I bringing this up? We need a vote of no confidence in the city manager before we fall any further victim to what's been going on in the city. In her contract under severability says that if she is found misconduct under this section of the statute, she gets no golden parachute package on the backs of us residents here in Deltona. And she has violated A and B. I'm going to go ahead and read those to you real quick, because I think it's important for you to understand what those are. Number 29, misconduct. Irrespective of whether the misconduct occurs at the workplace or during working hours, includes but is not limited to the following, which may not be construed with each other. Okay, so A, conduct demonstrating conscious disregard of an employer's, the city of Deltona, interest and found to be deliberate violation or disregard of the reasonable standards of behavior which the employer expects of their employee. Such conduct may include but not limited to damage, theft of property, blah, blah, blah. The reason I bring up this, a lot of things fall under this, but when I read theft of employer property, I kind of went back to an email. If you remember, I spoke about our award-winning IT, Steve. and how when he found out the hard drive was removed without IT permission and by a third party, he had a lot of concerns. And one of those was he felt it constituted theft of the city property. So if she okayed the removal of that, there's a connection there. Come on, she's in violation of this. And that's just one. There's many other ways in which reasonable standards of behavior has not happened. Let's go to B. Carelessness or negligence to a degree or reoccurrence that manifests culpability or wrongful intent or shows an intentional and substantial disregard of the employer's interest, the City of Deltona, or of the employee's duties and obligations to the city. She has participated. She has had misconduct. She's not even following the fraud policy. Instead, she's trying to cover it up. She's trying to help not give up the records. It's absurd. Any vote of confidence on our city manager, after everything that you can see here, I'll be more than happy to provide it to you, tell you where to find it, would make me want to question. So take very special note that if at any point a vote of confidence comes up on our city manager, watch very carefully who is in favor of our city manager after all this, because there's much more. You ask how we ended up with her, right? Well, we had a top 3. She wasn't on the list. She didn't qualify. You had to be a previous city manager before to qualify and some other things, but who brought her back? My understanding, and in everything that I've pulled, Commissioner Christopher Nabik brought her back in as his favorite choice. Now, I'm not going to make any accusations here, but my thinking is, well, if I Google her and scandal pops up all over the place, would I want to bring them to our city? I personally would not. He found her the best fit over the top 3 that had already made the cut. I have a lot of more questions about that. I do want you to know that in addition to bringing Jane and her scandal over to our city, we also packed up her boyfriend Alex and brought him over. And I know that we've talked about this. I'm not sure if you've been on our page, but he's been accused of calling some elderly women Hispanic trash, threatening to smack one of them at the Senior Community Center. We've uncovered some things in the past where he may or may not have been accused of rape. We have so much bad history here, and we brought them here. We paid for it. I have the moving expenses and the reports of how much it cost her. Let me tell you what. It's time for her to go, and when she does, she doesn't take another penny of our hard-earned money with her. I want to know, because of the El Paso scandal and how that closed up, I think we have a right to know the exit of City Attorney Vos and any deals or any packages with that. Any upcoming exits to include Jane Shang, it should be completely transparent. It should have the residents in mind and not behind back doors like it was in El Paso. I've already told you she violated that Florida statute that's in her contract. She should get nothing when she leaves. In fact, I would recommend, we're going to put up all the numbers and the commission information. You should contact them and you should let them know. You do not have confidence in our city manager, and according to this statute that she violated, she gets nothing when she leaves. Watch very closely at Monday's meeting. I think all this information has been is going to be sent to every commissioner. I'm going to ensure that, so that if a vote takes place, whether Monday or further down the road, they will all be fully aware of Jane Shang. Thank you.